Welcome to Vertical City, a high-rise hike around some of the world's most iconic tall buildings.
I'm Matt Berman.
And I'm Charlie Luxton.
And as architects, Charlie and I have the greatest job on the planet.
Scaling the tallest towers around the globe, from Hong Kong
to Taiwan.
From London
to Kuala Lumpur.
We'll be seeing architecture on a grand scale and a great height, a unique perspective, literally hanging off the side of skyscrapers.
As well as uncovering the stories of power, politics, and dynamic design that lie behind them. At the very end of the 20th century, the construction of a remarkable pair of skyscrapers, the Petronas Towers, heralded a new generation of super tall buildings. For the Western architect Cesar Pelli, it was an opportunity to help define the identity of an Asian nation. For Malaysia, it was a chance to come out loud and proud on the world stage. Together, they would travel a rocky and often uncharted road to achieving their dreams of building the world's tallest towers. In the late 1980s, the Malaysian government decided to relocate the racetrack that was right here in the center of the capital city of Kuala Lumpur, and in its place build a skyscraper so unprecedented in size and scale, and so ambitious that it sought to overtake the Sears Tower as the tallest building in the world. But for the team of Western architects who were charged with the task, defining a symbol for this Asian country that both respected the past and looked forward to the 21st century would be an enormous design challenge. And getting it built here in Malaysia would prove almost impossible. The Petronas Towers are arguably the most striking super tall buildings in the world. These elaborately curved steel-clad skyscrapers rise dramatically into the tropical Malaysian skies, giving an impression which is both retro and futuristic, like something out of Metropolis or Flash Gordon. But look again and you'll catch glimpses of traditional Islamic design, and the pair of towers start to resemble the minarets of a vast mosque. Designed by Cesar Pelli, the pair of towers was completed in 1998 at a cost of $1.2 billion. Their distinctive decorative spires above 88 floors of office space reach a height of over 1,480 feet. Upon completion, the towers reigned as the world's tallest buildings for 6 years. So how do the Petronas Towers sit within the cultural history of Kuala Lumpur? A brief tour of the city's other key buildings will help me understand. In the last few decades, Kuala Lumpur has seen a radical change in both its economy and its architecture. Malaysia's newfound wealth and business links with the West have meant it's had to redefine itself, and that is no more evident than in the skyline of its capital city. Up until the 1960s, Kuala Lumpur's most notable buildings were leftovers from its colonial past, such as this British governmental building designed by A.C. Norman. Malaysia's National Mosque, built in 1965, started to develop a modern Islamic style. The Tabung Haji took this further. Built in 1984, this elegant hourglass tower has echoes of a religious temple. The city's main theater, the so-called Palace of Culture, lives up to its name with its dramatic layers of pointed roofs. But nothing compares with the city's crowning glory, the spectacular Petronas Towers. This soaring pair of skyscrapers, linked by a 550-foot-high bridge, has taken Malaysian architecture to a whole new level. They really are like nothing I've seen before. The first thing that strikes me about this building is just how shiny it is. It's like a shiny new quarter. I mean, it just kind of glistens. And then it's connected by this bridge, which you rarely see anywhere that high up, connecting two towers. It's a very kind of unique statement to make. And stainless steel is a very high-tech material that really kind of saw its expression in architecture in the 1980s. So to see it reused here and used in all these curved forms really kind of has a very techy, almost spaceship quality about it. The Malaysian and Islamic roots of this pair of towers become more apparent when you go inside. At first, the expansive wood veneer behind the lobby's front desks creates a familiar corporate feel. But explore the ground level further, and the true character of the building reveals itself through some interesting detailing. Although I really didn't notice it when I first walked in, one of the most dominant features in this lobby are these decorative screens that adorn all of the upper windows. Now, the screens do an amazing thing. They really kind of diffuse the very, very harsh natural light. They also create a nice separation between the exterior and the interior, so you know that you're in a different type of place, a place in some ways that's sort of more solemn or official, and they remind me of some of the screens that you might see in a mosque. You know, I've always known that the use of figural images in Islamic culture was discouraged, which is why you tend to find strong geometries used. And so I'm not surprised to find that here in these tile patterns, kind of made up of different colored marbles. And to see these overlapping geometries again here in this light fixture, very sort of similar to the plan of the building itself, helps to locate this building in an Islamic country. Throughout the space, Eastern and Islamic motifs crop up, such as this etched steelwork made to look like carved wood. This place is definitely not like the skyscrapers I'm used to back home in Manhattan. Here, the emphasis is less on business and money and more on a kind of religious and cultural symbolism. But the modern high-tech side of Malaysia's character is never far away. You know, the use of stainless steel everywhere in this building is really just incredible. It's a very indulgent material. It's not cheap. It's actually very expensive. So to begin to wrap these enormous pillars with it and all of the soffits and walls really says that this place is about showing national pride. One of the beautiful things about steel is that you can actually cut it with razor-like precision, which allows these kind of quarter-inch reveals to be a very dominant feature in this space. You see them everywhere. You see them wrapping up the walls, wrapping up the wood panels. You even see them in the ceiling. This whole idea of the reveal or of setting two things apart from one another really seems to be a theme in the space. But it's not only grand symbolic statements. There's more going on here. I think when Pelly designed this building, he was having fun playing with different architectural styles and references. It's certainly a departure from his usual more conservative approach. As much as this building is supposed to be influenced by the art and architecture of Islam, it really just frankly reminds me of the Chrysler building. The top especially, you've got all of the curved stainless steels kind of tapering up and rising up into a spire. Those kinds of references, that kind of Art Deco embellishment reinforces some of the ways that Pelly is playing with the language of architecture to send a very interesting and mixed message. Perhaps the biggest surprise can be found lower down between the two towers. It's pretty common these days for skyscrapers to have massive shopping malls attached at the base. And this one is no different. Right behind me is the shopping mall with all of the requisite stores. But this skyscraper has something special attached, and it's right upstairs. The home of the Malaysian Philharmonic. This stunning space was designed to rival the acoustics of the best concert halls in Europe. So there you have it, a skyscraper, a shopping mall, and a Philharmonic. Why would the Malaysian government choose these symbols to represent their country? Throughout the 80s, Malaysia's tiger economy was booming, thanks to their nationally owned oil and gas company, Petronas. At the same time, the authorities in Kuala Lumpur decided to re-site the large horse racing track in the center of the city, leaving a huge site open for development. Seizing this opportunity, Petronas decided it was the ideal site to build a sparkling new headquarters, one that would put them firmly on the world map. A competition invited international architects to submit their designs for this Malaysian skyscraper. But unfortunately, here in Malaysia, there were really no precedents to work off of in terms of understanding what a Malaysian skyscraper really meant. So they had to invent it. There was tremendous pressure here to get it right, to help define the symbol for a nation. Ironically, the competition was won by Argentine-born American architect Cesar Pelli. His task was to design a distinctly Malaysian building.
We asked them, what do you mean by Malaysian? And he says, we don't know. It's up to you to figure it out.
So Pelli and his team set to work. He had already been responsible for several high-profile skyscrapers around the world, such as One Canada Square at Canary Wharf in London. But this new building for Petronas would have to be something entirely different.
One very key thing in my mind was that the building should not look like if it could have been built in the United States or anywhere in Europe, and we just happened to be building in Malaysia.
Pelli's initial designs were rejected on the grounds that they weren't Malaysian enough. What this really meant was that they weren't Islamic enough. What he needed was a bit of divine inspiration.
We went to Yale Library and we covered our tables with books on Islamic art, and it was very obvious. The key form in Islamic art is two interlaced squares, like this. And the two interlaced squares, traditionally in Islamic art, represent the incomprehensibility of God. And that's what we call arabesques.
Although this design ticked the right boxes with its Islamic reference, it didn't provide enough floor space. Pelli came up with a solution. By adding scallops between each point, he increased the usable area of each floor without losing the interlocking squares.
Eventually, we ended up adding another 8 semicircular elements, and that was what became the final form for the building.
Interlocking geometric patterns and sweeping curves have been used for centuries in the architecture of mosques. The use of such complex Islamic designs for a modern skyscraper is a far cry from the minimalist sheer-sided blocks prevalent in cities such as Chicago. In fact, Pelli's designs for Petronas had more in common with ancient Eastern temples than they did with Mies van der Rohe. Perhaps his masterstroke was to further reject the trends of modernism by creating 2 classically symmetrical towers with a symbolic connecting bridge.
Here now, the main axis of symmetry is in the space in between, in the void, which gives it a more spiritual quality, which is appropriate for a tower that wants to be a symbol. So in some ways, the office functions become secondary.
Gradually, Pelli perfected his vision of 2 highly decorative towers. It was a tough job at times convincing the developers that it could be built on budget.
He had very distinct view about how he wanted it to come out, and he wasn't going to allow us to change it. We couldn't come to an understanding with Pelli to compromise. We had to go back to the board, and Pelli used to present it and tell them that this is the elegance that he wants it to be. And then we used to argue the case that we could do without it. Most of the time